Rhebe, Rhebekah Star in the studio with me today. You're calling in to the Bowl and Breffix hotline. Welcome to the Bowl and Breffix podcast. My name is Jordyn, and I'll be your guide today. Today, I'd like to welcome a beautiful friend of mine who is so magical and so wise, and I'm so excited to present her to you all today. Welcome, Rhebe. It's motherfucking Bowl and Breffix, the podcast.
Oh, that's a bit of an introduction. Wise. I don't think many people could have said that about me 20 years ago.
Recovery is weird like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was talking to Iron Man, a friend of ours, the other day about how I don't know if it's I can only speak for myself in this way because I know it's largely my wounded inner child that needs to be constantly reminded of the fact that I'm doing really well. But I think that I have this programming that tells me that I'm not doing enough or I'm not doing good enough or that everyone sees me as incapable when or unwise or whatever it may be. But if I take a breath and take a moment to look at the evidence, it's quite to the contrary that, we're perceived as quite differently from how our wounded inner child can make us think that we are.
Yeah. The inner child stuff for me, it was a huge part of when things started to change. I didn't actually start connecting with my inner child until only in the last few years. So I was aware of it when I first came into recovery. It was spoken about in the rehab, but there weren't necessarily any kind of meditations and things that I've done since now. I mean, yeah, I suppose it was just part of them finding their ways because it's been 20. I'm 48 now, and I came into recovery for the first time when I was 21. So that was a long time ago, and the changes that I see just in understanding what people believe addiction is, or and even how the recovery groups are changing. I mean, this is evolvement, is it not, of just the human beings, the human race. But yeah, even saying the human race is like, yeah, I haven't said that for a while, and it's like, but it's not a race. It's funny how yeah, even putting it in that term. Yeah. There's a moment for me to reflect on later.
I can only imagine how much recovery fellowships and the kind of language that happens in recovery groups and the strict I don't know, I can just imagine how much recovery has changed in the last 20 some years.
Well, yeah, what I found really interesting for myself, because I'm here in New Zealand, uh, I mean, New Zealanders as an actual people and culture is quite different from America. And well, I mean, it's all different countries, but there still is quite a strong element here in New Zealand that when I started going to Zoom meetings, internationally, uh, I really felt more comfortable in a lot of the meetings I would go to because there was more of a freedom, and I suppose maybe that's because the 12-step recovery started there. I don't actually know off the top of my head when it technically came to New Zealand. Yeah, I mean, I probably did know at some point, but there's still quite a strong element, and we don't have a huge amount of groups. I mean, my hometown, we don't even have a meeting every day, an actual physical meeting. And we're talking about maybe you might get 20 odd people at the biggest meeting. I mean, my hometown's about 48,000 people, so, and where I live now, there's meetings every day, but it's only slightly bigger. And yeah, you might get about 30 people at the biggest meeting. So, and yeah, so there's a definite kind of stigma still attached in my country to admitting to that, because our levels of addiction here are extremely high compared to the rest of the world. So yeah, and the social issues we have here. New Zealanders vary their emotions a fair bit compared to Australia even. Australians are a bit more, I find, like the American culture, it's a bit more, I'm here, this is what's going on for me. But here in New Zealand, there's very much a pushing down. It's, yeah, people aren't really overly comfortable in sharing their emotions in the general consensus of our society. So, it's, yeah, noticing those differences. It probably explains why I gel with people overseas in a way better than what I do. And it probably explains why a lot of New Zealanders leave New Zealand, particularly more creative thinking people, and that because there is, yeah, yeah. I mean, I admit I'm a freak, and I'm okay with that. But yeah, there's not a lot of us.
Yeah,
Most of us are overseas.
you told me before that you feel I mean you'd be very unique anywhere you'd go, but that there's not a whole lot of freaks in New Zealand, which is very interesting to me. I would think it would not be that way.
Well, I don't mean to. It sounds funny even you put it in that context. A lot of freaks. It's just that there's not a lot of authenticity. But I mean, there probably is. It's just that people don't feel safe to be themselves. I mean, I can think sort of. I can relate to my own family dynamic of of my dad in particular. Uh, yeah, he's very much gone down the line of, he was very much into theatre. He's a very good writer. He used to write a lot of plays. He was very involved in that. And if he could get an address, he'd get an address. There was that kind of element. He went to all boys' schools, though. My father quite liked that. So, but he really wanted to be a chef. He wanted to go to London and do cordon bleu and all of that. He's very good chef, even though he hasn't got the degrees or paperwork for it. But there wasn't the freedom. My grandfather was a dentist, and it sort of was frowned on in a way. And so yeah, he just fell into enjoying himself on some levels before he obviously met my mother and had me and my siblings. But he very much went traditional, and as I shoved it down, I mean, he's went into the teaching and ended up being, headmaster of the school that he was at for a long time. And, so he's very much wearing suits. And yeah, I wonder what that's actually done to him on some levels, because it's obvious to me now that he was wanting to enjoy who he was, but there wasn't the avenues. It wasn't where there wasn't so much the avenues for me either, but I don't know. I've always had from when I was a little kid, like, oh, well, you can tell me that that's what I'm going to be. And I've tried to fit into those boxes, but it never actually worked. And I still had a stubbornness, even though I didn't know myself, because I was abusing drugs and alcohol to, yeah, hide the trauma and just try and deal with being in a world where I didn't feel I fitted in. So I just, yeah, it's, as I say, I'm more authentically myself now. And I think that comes with age, if we're going to go on about that. As you know, I don't believe in time. It's an illusion. But that, interesting enough, was one of the best things I ever decided to do, was to look at time as an illusion, because where you mentioned before of how we don't think we're good enough or we're not doing enough. Mine is doing enough. I'm all right pretty much now, but the little thing on my shoulder is just like, you're just not doing enough. You haven't done enough because of where I am in my life. You know, I don't necessarily have anything physical to show beyond me and, the stuff in my room and my car. I'm still trying to, well, I'm not even trying. It's just I'm going with the flow now. And, I'm getting these opportunities coming, but not doing enough. So when I decided to really, just the time is an illusion, and I'm like, well, if I start thinking that, maybe it'll take the pressure off me from thinking I'm not doing enough. And there's also the element of like, I really believe in, for me, the belief in the multi-universes and reincarnation, if you want to put it as that. So I've got to the point of like, well, if I don't do it in this life, I'll do it in another. So, and for whatever reason, that's really helped for my anxiety, even though it can be eye rolling to some people when I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, there's an
tell me a
illusion.
little bit about your ideas of reincarnation and what let's talk a little bit about what our ideas about reincarnation and death really is, because I'd be fascinated to hear about what you think, like your, because we can't know, right? We can't know until we've died what death is, but we can make conjectures and things based on our intuition and our spiritual knowledge. So I'd be really interested to hear your ideas about reincarnation and death.
Well, I might say to start off, I have died, as in physical body, and I went somewhere. I might add, it wasn't a very pleasant place, uh, but uh, it was enough to make me. My life changed after that, but it actually, I got amnesia from it. I did a very serious suicide attempt. This is just before I came into, I was sent to rehab. My life disintegrated. The year of, my birthday is at the end of November, and in the year of where I turned 21 was the worst year of my life by far. My grandfather died. I was very close to my dad's parents. My grandfather died of cancer, and my grandmother just deteriorated. I ended up being put in the position of caring for her, which in hindsight was not really the best idea, but I was the only person that she wanted around her. And she wouldn't go into a rest home, understandably. So I was put in charge, and but yet I had a raging alcohol and drug issue. And so I deteriorated very quickly and couldn't cope with everything. I'd had quite a significant car accident as well. It was not pleasant. The car accident story is, yeah, divine intervention along those lines as well. But I took an overdose of my grandmother's medication, and I actually died. It was so bad. I found out afterwards, which I sort of feeling now. It's like, yeah, just the fact I put through everyone that in that situation, but I was unaware. I came to an ICU, and I didn't find out until a week or so later, when a friend got really upset with me and said, well, because I forgot, I totally got amnesia for a few weeks about the actual I died. It didn't come back to me until a few weeks afterwards. But the week after my suicide attempt, my friend got very upset with me and was like, "You have no idea what you put us through. We had, your parents ringing us saying like, I'm going to die." The hospital said, she's, yeah, it's really bad. She's not going to pull through. You need to all come up and say your goodbyes to me. So, that's what my friends and my family had to go through. But I obviously survived. And yeah, when I started remembering um, a few weeks later of like this actual death thing, I went into the void, I suppose you would call it. I went into just blackness. And I just remember thinking, okay, right, this is interesting. And then I could feel as though there were, how you watch sharks when they're circling their prey?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could feel whatever this energy was, and it was a number of, well, I was going to say separate energies, but I could feel them like circling around and getting closer. And then I actually felt some bumps as such, could feel where, just like sharks, do when they start circling you and then they bump you, before they go in for the frenzy feed. And of all things, because I was brought up Christian, not that my family were overly religious in any way, I was sort of like, okay, right, I don't know what to do here, but I'm pretty certain these things are going to start ripping me apart very shortly. So I actually thought, okay, maybe this is when you ask for Jesus Christ to come in. So that's what I did. I was like, Jesus Christ, can you get me out of there, please? And it was like, whoosh, like I was gone. I was out of there. I personally believe Jesus is an ascended master in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was my experience. And when I look back in hindsight, yeah, things started changing to some degree. Things briefly got quite bad. After the actual overdose, I finally admitted I had an issue and I was waiting to get into rehab, but I kept on drinking. I used to get arrested quite a bit. They would send a number of police cars if someone rang up and they said who the person was that needed the police assistance. So I was a very angry, I caused a lot. No, I wouldn't say a lot, but I was just somebody that the police knew had issues and was a lot of trouble. So they got me into rehab pretty quick because of that. Yeah, I was looking at going to prison. So
Wow.
anyway,
So when you died, I know you said that there's some amnesia around this event, but do you recall there being a kind of like dropping back into your body
nothing like that
element?
at all. Nothing like that at all. I have read a number of things since research wise of when somebody takes an overdose of medication in particular, it interferes with it can interfere with the passing on, which I found interesting. I was like, oh, maybe that's why I didn't have some of the traditional ideas of seeing white lights and there's yeah, well, as I say, that's just a lot of people have obviously spoken about it, and I'm one who could say the same. I didn't feel, yeah, I was just there, and I was clinically dead. You know, I was clinically dead. I went back and saw my medical notes and stuff, and that's why, yeah, they kept on managing to bring me back, and then, but I was actually dead for a length of time. So yeah, it's like okay. So yeah, my experience, as you said, your question was of what I think death is. I believe we're here in physical bodies to have human experiences. That is what, then that can be. I don't really look at things as good and bad anymore either. It's just everything that we feel is part of the human experience. So I believe we just, yeah, as I say, I believe in multi universes. So I believe with every choice we make, we're spinning off into different universes each time as well, which can sound slightly confusing to someone. In my head, it makes total sense to me. But I believe we just, yeah, we come into our bodies and we just keep on being reincarnated living. I believe we're all one. and we all live each other's lives at some point, if you want to put it in that way. It's eternal, and we just keep on, growing, evolving, with the lessons we learn as we live in that experience. So it's just a new door. Death is just a new door, just like birth is a new door. When you've experienced birth and you're in that room. I mean, I've had 2 kids, but I've been blessed that my best friend asked me to support her with the birth of her 4th child. Uh, yeah, it's there's something magical in that, and I would like to say death. Death's slightly different for me, obviously, because of my own experiences. And I put down my grandmother's dog, actually. That's the only death I've attended, and it affected me so deeply that I said I can't be in a room with someone when they die, which sounds really awful on one hand, but that's where I'm at with that. But things change. I mean, there are a lot of things I wouldn't have thought that I would choose to do or be involved with. But the more information I've gathered over the years, the more you know.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Like, I try not to speak in absolutes anymore. I was talking to a friend of mine about it. Like, it's a silly example, but it speaks to, like, I was like, oh, for years I've been walking around saying I don't like when sweet and savory things are combined in food. I absolutely do not. I've decided that this is something I don't like. And I was like, well, maybe I do. Like, mango hot sauce is awesome. And I said that to my friend. I'm like, I wonder why I've enjoyed, like, no, I definitely don't like that. And she said something to the effect of, like, I think when you've experienced trauma or like instability in your life, having some things that you think are absolute is really comforting, even if it's just like preferences that you have. So I've been examining that in myself, like where I try to find absolute stability in my life, but I think the whole thing is that like nothing is stable, nothing is permanent, and our human egos attempt to create some absolutes and things that we can depend on within that.
Well, I think we have our preferences. I mean, I know what brings me joy and happiness, and I have a pretty good relationship with my higher power. From an instinctual, I I I feel things. So I can I have a knowing in me of something of like, okay, is this something I actually need to try? So it's a different experience, or is this something that I just know that it's not me? I mean, it's a funny, interesting thing. As I say, in regards to talking about creativity. And I mentioned before about my dad being heavily involved in theatre and stuff like that when I was young. So I was around that when I was very young quite a lot. And I'm a show off, I I I really enjoy to sing, and people encourage me to keep doing it. So I suppose in that way, I'm obviously sound okay to some people, but there was always a push for me to do theatre, and I, because I could sing and I liked, being the star of the show to some degree, but it never really felt right, even when I was at school. And I got the lead role when I was about 9, I think, or 10, at school because I was the only person who could sing. That was the reason I was chosen. We did Aladdin. So I was Aladdin. We're talking about now when I'm thinking about it. Yeah, and Of course, I sang wonderfully in that, but I didn't. I only felt right when I was singing. I didn't feel right acting. I don't feel right acting. And I think this is part of why there might be an issue for me around it, is because I like to be honest. So acting to me seems to be dishonest. I mean, I'm just tying in the threads as I'm talking to you about this.
Yeah.
So I've attempted theatre a number of times because, I've had people, my friends encourage me. I'm like, come on, get on stage. And and I've reluctantly in the end to shut them up, really, gone along. And I've said to them, it's just not me. It's, I like to sing. I'm not really, I love to dance, but I'm not one who can do choreography dance. I dance, funnily enough, I don't like to say like Mick Jagger because it's not like Mick Jagger. But if you've got an idea of how Mick Jagger is, where he just moves, he just does his thing. He hasn't been necessarily taught, as far as I know,
Yeah.
from my knowledge. He's just learnt by observing, but he dances, he feels it. He
Right.
does, and I'm the same. I clear dance, I clear freaking dance floors. I used to think I'd build up energy, with the band playing, because I've got, my ears are really, really tiny. So I hear music slightly different from most people, which is probably why I'm quite a loud speaker as well. My voice box is quite unusual, according to the voice specialist. My vocal cords don't move at all. Um, anyway, that's a whole side thing with that. But I can dance right up near the amps, and it doesn't. My hearing's really good, um, and no one else could dance up there because it would hurt their ears. You see, so I figured it out, and I would be up the front, and everyone would be like, "How the hell does she do that?" And it's like, how, and your hearing's fine. It's like because I can feel the vibration
Right.
from it, and I'd dance, and then everyone would be like, "Oh, okay." And I'd get my own little dance space right at the front of the stage because no one else could handle being up there, but I could. I didn't understand at the time it was necessarily to do with my ears. It's just like, I can do this, so I'm going to do it because I just love dancing.
I love that. I definitely relate to that where it's like, I've always enjoyed acting. I studied theater in college. But yeah, I always just found that there was something a little off for me about acting. I appreciate your perspective about like something about it feels dishonest. But yeah, the best dancing comes from your soul. You just feel it and it just moves through you. It's that divine energy. So we have about 9 minutes left, but I want to hear a little bit about, if you're willing to share, honestly, obviously, about your relationship with San Pedro.
Oh, yeah. My main dude.
Yeah, your husband. Yeah.
Yeah. A huge part of yeah, my recovery. Um, I got very fed up with AA and NA and got on the I'm doing it my way kind of thing, and went out of the program in my 30s. Would have been, yeah, my 30s. I had about 5 years clean, and then for whatever reason it was like, nah, this isn't me anymore. And in that, around that same time, I got given a little St. Pedro, but I didn't know what it was. One of my ex-boyfriends actually gave it to me, and I wasn't very good at keeping things alive, but of course, being a cactus, this little San Pedro in its little pot just kept on coming with me where I moved. And so, yeah, I had this cactus. I didn't know what it was, but it was with me for a number of years. And then I finally moved into a permanent house with my kids. And so it was like, oh, I'll stick this cactus in the ground. And it went nuts, like, because they grow so well, but seriously grew twice as fast than what they traditionally do. Because I measured it. I was like, this is growing so fast. Like, wow, I've never seen cactus grow this fast. My
Yeah.
brother came around to see me and he was like, oh, you've got St. Pedro. And I was just like, hey. And he's like, you don't know what you've got. And I'm like, no. And so I went down the rabbit hole with that. And I was wanting spiritual experiences at that time. Drugs and alcohol weren't necessarily a huge part of my life because I was being a mum and being a bit more responsible. But yeah, I was like, I went and did some research and was like, spiritual experience. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm after. So I did my research and I processed the San Pedro, and yeah, I felt love. It was, yeah, the level of love. I got what love was. Well, I think I did, but it was just the feeling of unconditional love, and it was as though everything was covered in diamonds. And I just had the most extraordinary day, you know. I manifested. I was like, you know, I'm at home, and my friends were a little bit worried. Friends of mine who I might add don't necessarily have addiction issues. So they were babysitting as such because I was like, I'm doing this, you know, and they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, this is meant to be. And yeah, so my friend came around and I was thinking, I really wanted to go to the beach. And she was coming around a little bit later, but she was ringing me on the phone. Anyway, she turns up and she announces to me, here I am sitting in my kitchen waiting for her, but I'm thinking, so I really want to go to the beach. And she turns up, and the first thing she said was, oh, it'd be a good idea if we go to the beach. I was like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted. And oh, yeah, no, it was just incredible. So I still didn't really know what was going on for me. I can look back in hindsight and see, but since then, I've grown a lot of San Pedro. I've sat in ceremony of well, not even this year, but realistically, when you think, because it's 13 years. But I've done this all from the San Pedro, and as the San Pedro has led me. So I haven't really had any guidance necessarily from any kind of medicine man or woman. It's just the sort of inner knowing myself. And the San Pedro led me to go to South America and sit with Mother Aya. So that was quite extraordinary. The medicine woman I work with, her main medicine actually is San Pedro. So, and I'm going back again at the end of this year. And yeah, we'll be sitting with her with San Pedro this time as well as ayahuasca. So, you know, I honestly know that where I'm at now is because of the San Pedro coming into my life. It's a heart medicine, works on the heart chakra. I really was a cold hard bitch, you know, realistically. I had shut my heart off a long time ago because of childhood trauma and experiences like that. But, you know, I was the bitch that would say what was said, and I wouldn't really give a shit, you know, if it was hurtful to somebody, because it was the truth as far as I was concerned. But yeah, the San Pedro has softened my heart and just brought in my own love for myself, and acceptance. And in the ripple effect of that, it's made me a much more kinder person to be around. Uh, so he's definitely my main dude.
So we're gonna get cut off pretty soon. So
Yes, we
wrap
are.
it
Yes,
up.
we are, darling.
But Rhebe, I love you so much. I treasure your friendship so much, and it's beautiful just to hear your experiences and your experience of the world, and I look forward to always deepening our friendship and learning more about you and the way you see things. So to cap this off real quick, is there anything that you would say to young people who might be traumatized or dealing with mental health issues or spiritual issues who are delving into psychedelic exploration for the first time?
Ooh, the thing that really works for me is be kind to yourself, no matter what. It's just be kind to yourself. You know, we can be kind to other people, but a lot of the time we forget to do that for ourselves. And the other thing that has really worked just in life in general, not such from a perspective of looking at it from psychedelics, is there are always going to be pros and cons for every decision you make. There is no perfect door that you go through. There's no one where it's like I walk through that door and everything is going to flow and it's going to be wonderful. Yes, there are going to be many wonderful experiences, but there are always going to be, if you want to class it as negative or positive, attached to that decision. People forget. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you can accept the fact that, yeah, that whatever decision you make, there will be some things that you're like, oh yeah, but there will be beautiful things about it too. But you can't make a decision and get the, oh yeah, the whole time. There's always going to be little sort of niggles. It's just part of life, you know, how you deal with those niggles,
So we have to,
how you
to wrap
respond.
up. But thank you
Yes.
so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, darling. I love you so much.
I love you.